Have you ever noticed how the most powerful people in your life are rarely the ones making the most noise? How true strength often lies in the ability to wait, to observe, while others scramble frantically around you. Welcome back to another transformative session. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most misunderstood aspects of personal power, the art of strategic patience. Has this ever happened to you? You feel pressured to make a decision, to act immediately, as if the world might collapse if you take a moment to think. Society has conditioned us to believe that constant action equals progress, that immediate results validate our worth. But what if I told you this mindset is precisely what keeps most people trapped in mediocrity? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Life isn't a sprint where the fastest runner wins. It isn't even a marathon where endurance alone triumphs. Life is a battlefield disguised as a chessboard, where those who move without thinking become the first casualties. Look around you, the impatient rush forward and bleed out first. The desperate collapse under the weight of their own anxiety. The weak, showing their hunger too openly, become prey for those who understand true power. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you approach every situation in your life. The Machiavellian masters of history understood something that modern society has forgotten. Waiting isn't weakness. Patience isn't passive. It's the ultimate form of control. Think of the hunter who sits motionless in perfect stillness while his prey panics in the open field. Who holds the power in this scenario? The one frantically moving, or the one watching, calculating, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike? This patience is a weapon sharper than any sword, more devastating than any immediate action. When you master this approach to life, every move becomes deliberate, every word calculated, every silence chosen with perfect precision. The masses try to force life to bend to their will through noise, through desperation, through endless activity. But the strategic mind understands when you stop trying to force life, life begins to bend toward you instead. This is Machiavellian patience, cold, ruthless, and disciplined. It's not for the weak-minded who need constant validation or immediate gratification. It's for those who understand that true power operates in the shadows, in the spaces between actions, in the calculated pauses that make others uncomfortable. What if the very moments where you feel you must act immediately are precisely the moments where patience would serve you best? What secrets could you uncover if you simply waited while others revealed themselves through their desperation? If you're ready to master these principles of strategic patience and psychological power, hit that subscribe button now. I share powerful insights that most will never discover about human psychology and strategic influence. Consider for a moment the hidden manipulation that surrounds us daily. The world operates on a currency of urgency. Act now. Limited time offer. Don't miss this opportunity. Behind each of these phrases lies a subtle trap designed to make you surrender your greatest power, your ability to pause and think. This manufactured urgency isn't coincidental. It's a deliberate strategy to push you into acting from your most vulnerable emotional states: fear, insecurity, and desperation. The true transformation in your journey begins when you recognize this pattern and make a fundamental shift in your response. When the world demands immediate action, the ordinary person complies, but those who understand the deeper psychology at work know better. They hold the line, silent, composed, unreadable. In that moment of stillness, something remarkable happens. Those trying to manipulate you suddenly find themselves in an uncomfortable void, their tactics rendered useless against your composed silence. This is the mindset shift few ever make. While the masses believe power lies in movement and noise, the hidden truth is that genuine authority reveals itself through restraint. Look at any truly influential figure throughout history. What distinguishes them isn't their constant motion, but their calculated stillness. The fool believes strength means ceaseless action, loud declarations, and visible effort. But real impact comes from the opposite, the disciplined control of urges and impulses. Think about it. Who instills more respect and even fear? The person who reacts to everything, whose every thought and emotion is displayed for all to see, or the one who reveals only what they choose to, whose next move remains a mystery? When you master restraint, you create an aura of unpredictability that makes others cautious in your presence. They cannot manipulate what they cannot read. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic and address one of the most devastating mistakes I see people make on their path to achievement. It's the premature revelation of ambition, the eager exposure of plans before the foundation is properly built. This is where patience becomes not just tactical, but essential for survival. When you move too quickly, announcing your intentions to the world before you've secured the resources, connections, and positioning needed to protect them, you create a target on your back while simultaneously revealing your blueprint to potential competitors. It's a revelatory moment when you realize that men who act too fast aren't strategic. They're suicidal in their approach to success. The journey of building anything meaningful requires a behind-the-scenes discipline that few have the strength to maintain. Every empire, every fortune, every position of real influence was first constructed in silence, away from the eyes that would seek to dismantle it before it could stand. This isn't paranoia. It's the wisdom that comes from understanding human nature and the competitive landscape we all navigate. What decisions are you making from a place of manufactured urgency? Where might restraint serve you better than immediate action? These are the questions that separate those who will achieve lasting impact from those who will burn brightly but briefly. Write in the comments, "Silence is my strategy," if you're committed to mastering this approach to power and influence. The most profound transformation in your life begins when you master the art of withholding. In a world that demands constant expression, constant sharing, constant validation, the ability to hold back creates a rare form of power that few ever experience. This journey requires you to retrain your most basic instincts. When every nerve in your body screams for release, when emotion demands expression, when the urge to defend yourself feels overwhelming, that precise moment is your greatest opportunity for mastery. This is what I call cold power psychology, the systematic discipline of bending your emotions into submission until they serve your greater purpose rather than controlling your actions. Think about how often people sabotage their negotiations, their relationships, their positions of influence simply because they couldn't contain an emotional reaction. The momentary satisfaction of expressing anger or insecurity costs them long-term power and respect. Behind the scenes of every great downfall is almost always an emotional outburst that could have been contained. What separates those who merely understand this principle from those who embody it is consistent practice. The mindset shift happens gradually as you train yourself to pause before speaking, to question your impulses, to ask, who benefits if I react right now? More often than not, the answer isn't you. Now I want to address a common misconception about Stoicism that prevents many from embracing its transformative potential. People often mistake Stoicism for emotional numbness, for an absence of feeling. This couldn't be further from the hidden truth. Stoicism isn't about feeling nothing. It's about becoming untouchable while feeling everything. Imagine standing in the middle of a raging fire, fully aware of the heat, fully experiencing the danger, and yet smiling calmly while others around you panic and burn. That's the Stoic ideal, not the absence of sensation, but the transcendence of reaction. The revelations come when you realize this quality makes you essentially ungovernable by outside forces. The person who cannot be provoked wins every confrontation before it begins. The individual who refuses to show weakness naturally rises to positions of authority. The decision to cultivate this quality isn't just about personal power, it's about freedom from manipulation. When you can stand firm amid chaos, you become the eye of the hurricane, the still point around which everything else revolves. And this brings us to perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of this entire journey, the strategic advantage of silence. In a culture that equates speaking with knowledge and silence with ignorance, few recognize that silence isn't emptiness. Silence is strategy in its purest form. Consider the impact of this principle. Every single time you open your mouth, you give away leverage. Every time you rush to explain yourself, you hand your power to another. The compulsion to fill silence, to justify decisions, to defend positions, these are the hallmarks of insecurity, not strength. Those who understand the psychology of influence know that information is currency and freely giving it away devalues your position. When you choose to respond with deliberate, calculated silence, you create a void that others rush to fill, often revealing far more than you ever would have. Type in the comments, "My silence is my power," if you're beginning to see how this principle could transform your approach to challenging situations. There's a hidden truth that master strategists have understood throughout history. The human imagination is far more powerful than any fact you could present. When you deliberately withhold information, you create a vacuum that others' minds rush to fill. This principle turns one of our most basic psychological tendencies into a powerful advantage. The less others know about you, your intentions, and your capabilities, the more their imagination works overtime, often conjuring scenarios far more intimidating than reality. This mindset shift represents a complete reversal from how most people operate. The average person believes in transparency, in explaining themselves thoroughly, in making their intentions crystal clear. But in doing so, they surrender one of the most potent forces in human psychology, the power of uncertainty. When someone can measure your exact dimensions, they know precisely how to counter you. But when they're forced to guess, they'll almost always overestimate what they're up against. Subscribe to join our community of strategic thinkers who understand that true power comes through patience, not force. Every new video reveals another layer of this powerful framework. The journey toward mastering this principle begins with a simple revelation. Your mysterious silence creates a canvas upon which others project their own fears, doubts, and insecurities. Let them wonder, let them overthink, let their imagination construct elaborate theories about what you might be planning. That's how you gain control without moving a single piece on the board. Now, I want to explore how this connects to the concept of unpredictability as a source of power. In any interaction, the person who can be easily read is at an immediate disadvantage. If others see you restless, they instantly recognize your weakness. If they hear you talk too much, they can measure your intentions with alarming accuracy. But when you say little, when you wait patiently, when you reveal nothing, you become fundamentally unpredictable. And unpredictability is power in its purest form. Think about it. What makes certain leaders, negotiators, or even personal relationships so difficult to navigate? It's not knowing what comes next. It's the inability to prepare for what hasn't been revealed. This quality creates a psychological advantage that transcends physical strength, wealth, or position. The unpredictable person controls the rhythm of every interaction because others must constantly adjust to them, never the other way around. The natural world offers us profound wisdom in this regard. the transformation in. Your approach begins when you study true predators and their hunting strategies. They provide us with the perfect blueprint for effective action. The lion doesn't announce its presence with a roar before the hunt begins. The serpent doesn't warn with a hiss before it strikes. These apex predators understand instinctively what humans often forget. Advantage comes through silence. Instead, they employ a brilliant reversal of the expected pattern. They let the prey make noise. They allow their targets to panic, to reveal their positions, to exhaust themselves in frantic motion, and only then, when the moment is precisely right, do they strike with surgical precision. One decisive move, executed perfectly, ends the hunt. This is the model for effective action in every domain of life: patience, observation, precision, and decisive movement only when the time is exactly right. The impact of adopting this approach extends far beyond momentary advantages. It represents a complete paradigm shift in how you engage with every challenge. If you're beginning to see how these principles could transform your interactions, write in the comments, "I move like a predator," and we'll continue exploring this powerful psychological framework. The foundation of true influence begins with a fundamental understanding. Your words are not just communication, they are strategic assets to be deployed with precision. Most people treat communication as mere expression, but those who master the art of power recognize that every syllable reveals something about your position. This revelation demands a paradigm shift in how you approach every interaction. Control your tongue and guard your intentions not out of deception, but out of strategic discipline. Consider the profound advantage this creates. When the world must guess what you're thinking, they operate at a perpetual disadvantage. If they cannot read you, they cannot develop effective counter-strategies. If they cannot predict your next move, they cannot set traps along your path. This protective barrier isn't built through elaborate security systems or physical barriers. It's constructed through the disciplined management of what you choose to reveal. The transformation comes when you recognize how rare this quality has become in our contemporary landscape. We live in an era of oversharing, of constant digital confession, of emotional transparency elevated to a virtue. Yet this cultural shift has created a unique opportunity for those who understand the deeper psychology at work. While everyone else exposes their inner workings, the disciplined mind maintains its mystery. What's happening behind the scenes is fascinating. Most men cannot handle silence. The discomfort of an unvalidated thought drives them to confess their dreams, weaknesses, and insecurities, essentially begging for external validation. This compulsive need for approval creates a journey toward disposability. The more someone knows about you, the more replaceable you become. Mystery, by contrast, creates an aura of danger, not in a threatening sense, but in the sense that your capabilities remain undefined and therefore potentially limitless. Now, I want to explore a critical distinction that separates those who merely understand these principles from those who embody them. There exists a world of difference between waiting with discipline and hesitating from fear. On the surface, both might look identical: inaction in the face of opportunity, but the mindset beneath creates entirely different outcomes. Power gravitates naturally to the individual who waits with discipline, focus, and absolute belief in themselves. This isn't the paralyzed inaction of someone frozen by indecision. It's the calculated patience of a mind that knows exactly when to strike. The weak stall because they cannot decide. They're trapped in analysis paralysis, hoping external circumstances will force their hand. The strong, by contrast, wait from a position of complete clarity. They know precisely what they want, exactly how to get it, and are simply allowing the optimal moment to arrive. This distinction represents one of the most important revelations in the psychology of power. When you wait from strength rather than hesitation, you develop an almost supernatural sense of timing. You see opportunities others miss. You avoid traps others fall into. You conserve energy while others exhaust themselves in premature action. If you've ever noticed yourself hesitating when you should be waiting strategically, type in the comments, "I choose discipline over hesitation." This simple acknowledgement can begin a powerful shift in your approach. One of the most profound insights that changed my own journey comes from observing how true predators operate in nature. The eagle doesn't frantically chase every potential meal that crosses its field of vision. It doesn't exhaust itself pursuing marginal opportunities. Instead, it circles high, above, calm and detached, conserving its precious energy until the perfect moment reveals itself. Then, and only then, does it commit to decisive action. This natural wisdom offers us a powerful blueprint for transformation in every domain of life. Most people operate from a scarcity mindset, grabbing at every opportunity, chasing every potential lead, saying yes to every invitation. Behind this frenetic activity lies a fundamental fear that opportunities are limited and must be seized immediately. But this approach leads to a scattered existence, divided attention, and depleted resources. The alternative represents a complete paradigm shift. When you train yourself to conserve energy, to be selective about where you invest your time and attention, you develop a reservoir of power that others simply don't possess. Think about the most impactful people you know. Do they chase every shadow, or do they move with purpose, focusing their considerable energy on precisely the right targets at exactly the right moments? Now I want to explore how this connects to one of the most insidious forms of manipulation we encounter daily. Society has perfected the art of manufacturing urgency. Act now, they tell you. Decide fast, they insist. Don't miss your chance, they warn. Behind these seemingly innocent phrases lies a calculated attempt to short-circuit your decision-making process, to bypass your rational mind and trigger an emotional response. The hidden truth is that this urgency is almost always artificial. It's a deliberate strategy designed to make you act before you've had time to properly evaluate, to consider alternatives, to negotiate better terms. The masses fall for this manipulation out of fear, fear of missing out, fear of lost opportunity, fear of regret. But the patient individual sees through the facade. They understand a crucial reality that eludes most. Very little of genuine value is truly lost by waiting. This revelation allows you to make decisions from a position of clarity rather than emotional reactivity. When everyone around you is panicking to secure their place, you remain composed, knowing that genuine opportunities rarely vanish in an instant, and those that do are often not what they appeared to be. Perhaps the most powerful application of patience lies in its psychological impact on others. In the realm of dark psychology, few qualities are as genuinely unsettling as calm patience in the face of pressure. Standing before someone who refuses to react, who shows no panic, who cannot be broken by increasing pressure, this creates a uniquely destabilizing dynamic. What happens in these moments is fascinating. The composed individual becomes like a mirror, reflecting back the agitation and insecurity of those applying pressure. People reveal their weaknesses, their desperation, their true intentions when confronted with unflappable patience. They speak when they should be silent, offer concessions that weren't requested, and expose vulnerabilities they intended to keep hidden. If you've experienced this dynamic at work in your own life, write in the comments, "Patience reveals all." I'd love to hear about your experiences with this powerful principle. The pinnacle of this psychological framework manifests in what we might call masculine stoicism, not as a gendered concept, but as an archetype of human strength. This is Stoicism in its most refined form, unyielding, calculated, and relentless. In its execution, when you embody these qualities, you undergo a fundamental transformation that others can sense but rarely understand. You become the individual who cannot be forced into premature action, cannot be cornered by manipulation, cannot be rattled by provocation. What's remarkable about this journey is how the dynamic shifts once you've established this presence. In time, rather than you chasing after life, life begins to bend toward you. Opportunities that once required frantic pursuit seem to fall naturally into your hands. This isn't mystical thinking. It's the practical result of positioning yourself as the calm center in a world of reactionary chaos. Now I want to address perhaps the most powerful revelation in this entire framework, the strategic use of suffering. The hidden truth that separates extraordinary individuals from the masses lies in how they process pain. Every person on earth experiences suffering and bleeds in their own way, but only a select few discover how to transform that suffering into strength. Most never make this crucial mindset shift. The masses run from pain as if it were their enemy. They drown it in distractions, numb it with substances, or hide it behind forced positivity. But the individual on the path to true impact takes a radically different approach. They stare directly into their pain, not with masochistic intent, but with the clear understanding that contained within suffering lies untapped power waiting to be harnessed. Think about the most resilient people you've encountered. Behind their strength almost always lies a history of significant challenges that they didn't just survive, but metabolized into something useful. Pain isn't your adversary. When properly channeled, it becomes your most potent weapon, forging qualities that cannot be developed in comfort. This brings us to a profound insight that echoes throughout history. Genuine power comes through the forge of adversity. You cannot truly dominate in any domain if you have not first been burned by the flames of challenge. You cannot effectively rule if you have not experienced what it means to be crushed under pressure. This isn't mere philosophy, it's practical psychology. Real power emanates from a form of endurance that appears cold, unshaken, and unstoppable to outside observers. The journey through suffering creates something in you that cannot be faked or manufactured through theory alone. It builds an authentic core of resilience that others instinctively recognize and respect. When you've been tested by genuine adversity and remained standing, you carry yourself differently. Your decisions come from a place of hard-earned wisdom rather than untested theory. What struggles have you faced that initially seemed like curses but ultimately revealed themselves as catalysts for your growth? What pain have you transmuted into strength? If you're committed to this path of transforming your challenges into power, write in the comments, "My suffering becomes my strength." Acknowledging this principle marks the beginning of a profound shift in how you process life's inevitable hardships. What's particularly fascinating about this journey is how your relationship with pain creates unexpected psychological advantages in your interactions with others. There's a profound revelation here that few ever discover. People have been socially conditioned to expect suffering to break you. The standard script they've internalized says that trauma leads to fragility, that hardship creates weakness, that pain results in vulnerability. This expectation creates a powerful opportunity for psychological leverage. When you defy this script, when you rise from genuine suffering, sharper, colder, and more composed than before, your very existence becomes unsettling to those around you. You represent an anomaly they cannot easily categorize or understand. What should have destroyed you has instead refined you. What should have made you bitter has instead made you more focused. This transformation creates a form of psychological advantage that cannot be manufactured or faked. The impact this has on others operates at a primal level. They sense, often unconsciously, that they cannot control or manipulate someone who has mastered their relationship with pain. This makes you dangerous, not in a harmful sense, but in the sense that you operate outside the predictable patterns of behavior they've come to expect. Your resilience becomes a form of power they cannot easily counter. Now, I want to clarify a crucial distinction that's often misunderstood about Stoic strength. Masculine Stoicism, this archetype of composed power, doesn't involve pretending pain doesn't exist. It's not about numbing yourself to suffering or denying your humanity. The transformation comes not from the absence of pain, but from how you carry it. The Stoic master endures without complaint, without theatrics, without using suffering as currency for sympathy or attention. Think about the profound effect this has on how others perceive you. When the world sees someone smile with visible scars, stand tall despite obvious wounds, speak clearly despite known betrayals, they recognize immediately that this person is forged of something rarer and harder than ordinary material. This quality cannot be imitated effectively because it emanates from genuine experience, not performance. Behind the scenes of every great leader's journey lies this hidden pattern, the metabolization of pain into power. What separates those who collapse under pressure from those who transform under it often comes down to this fundamental mindset shift, seeing every setback, betrayal, loss, and rejection not as evidence of your weakness but as proof of your strength. The logic is beautifully simple, yet profoundly impactful. Pain didn't kill you. It carved you. It refined you. It made you sharper than those who ran from similar challenges. This revelation leads to one of the most important principles in this entire framework. Never waste your suffering. Every difficult experience contains potential energy that can either dissipate uselessly through complaint and self-pity or be converted into momentum that propels you forward. The choice of how to process that energy represents one of the most consequential decisions in your life journey. If you're committed to transforming your wounds into wisdom and your scars into strength, write in the comments, "My pain becomes my power." This acknowledgement marks the beginning of a profound psychological evolution. This perspective on suffering reveals an even more profound application, something that transforms pain from a passive experience into an active force in your arsenal. When you develop this mindset, every insult, every failure, every wound becomes more than something to endure. It becomes fuel stored within you, building potential energy that can be directed with precision when the moment calls for it. This cold, focused energy, when channeled properly, possesses the power to move mountains that seemed immovable. The Machiavellian mind perceives pain differently than most. Where others see only damage to be repaired, the strategic thinker sees leverage to be applied. Think about individuals throughout history who channeled personal suffering into extraordinary achievement. Behind virtually every revolutionary breakthrough, every paradigm-shifting movement, every remarkable comeback story lies this same pattern, the strategic conversion of personal pain into directed purpose. The transformation happens when you stop seeing your wounds as weaknesses to be hidden and start recognizing them as unique sources of insight and motivation that others simply don't possess. This revelation changes not just how you process suffering, but how you utilize it as a catalyst for decisive action in the moments that matter most. Now I want to explore a fundamental truth about power that contradicts what most people have been taught. Power isn't something that's given, it's something that's taken. But here's the crucial insight that changes everything. You don't always take it through direct force or obvious dominance. The highest form of power acquisition happens when you bend people and circumstances until they yield willingly, often without even realizing what's happening. This requires mastery of three interconnected elements: perception, timing, and influence. When you control how you're perceived, when you understand the perfect moment to act, and when you've developed the ability to shape others' decisions subtly, you create a form of influence that operates beneath conscious awareness. This is the hidden machinery behind every great leader's impact, every successful negotiator's advantage, every effective parent's guidance. Behind the scenes of this entire framework lies a crucial revelation about human nature itself. Despite our complexity and individuality, people operate according to remarkably predictable patterns. They act primarily from three core motivations: fear, greed, and pride. They instinctively chase pleasure and flee from discomfort. They hunger for validation and recognition, often more desperately than they seek material rewards. Once you truly understand what drives human behavior, not in theory, but through careful observation, you gain the ability to influence outcomes by gently pulling invisible strings. This isn't manipulation in a negative sense. It's the recognition that human psychology follows patterns, and working with these patterns rather than against them creates pathways of least resistance toward your desired outcomes. The journey toward mastering this understanding begins with heightened awareness of these motivational forces in yourself. When you can identify your own fears, ambitions, and need for validation, you develop a map that applies with variations to virtually everyone you encounter. If you're beginning to recognize these patterns in your interactions, type in the comments, "I see the invisible strings." This acknowledgement marks the beginning of a profound shift in how you navigate human dynamics. One of the most counterintuitive principles in this entire framework is the strategic advantage of being underestimated. Most people spend their lives trying to prove their value, showcase their talents, and demonstrate their capabilities at every opportunity. They operate from the assumption that recognition of strength creates advantage. But the master strategist understands a hidden truth. There's immense power in being perceived as less capable than you truly are. Never reveal your full strength or the complete scope of your abilities. Allow people to underestimate you and consider you relatively harmless. This creates a psychological blind spot that works consistently to your advantage. When others believe they have you figured out, categorized, and contained, they let their guard down in ways they never would around someone they perceive as a threat. This dynamic creates endless opportunities for observation, for gathering intelligence, and for making moves that go unchallenged until it's too late. When you deliberately hold back, allowing others to see only a fraction of your true capabilities, you create a veil of mystery around your limits. And mystery, as we've discussed, breeds a certain kind of fear, not terror, but cautious respect. This caution creates space for you to operate with fewer restrictions and less scrutiny than those who announce their strength at every turn. Now, I want to explore what might be the most powerful revelation in this entire framework: the ability to control the interpretation of events, not just the events themselves. Most people believe reality is fixed and objective, but the master strategist understands that reality is largely perceptual. The person who controls how situations are interpreted effectively controls reality itself. Consider the profound impact of this principle. If you experience a setback but frame it as a valuable lesson that makes you stronger, you haven't really lost, you've grown. If someone attacks you verbally or tries to provoke you, but you remain completely calm and composed, you've won the exchange before it even properly began. The battle for perception often determines outcomes far more decisively than the physical or verbal battle itself. This isn't mere positive thinking. It's the strategic reframing of circumstances to create advantage where none seem to exist. Throughout history, the most effective leaders have been those who could transform apparent defeat into the seeds of future victory through the deliberate control of narrative and interpretation. This skill represents one of the most significant leverage points available in any competitive landscape. The ultimate expression of these principles manifests when you become what I call the immovable center, the still point around which chaos revolves. This transformation occurs naturally when you recognize a fundamental aspect of human psychology. People crave certainty in an uncertain world. They are instinctively drawn to those who seem unshakable, who maintain composure when everyone else is losing theirs. When you embody the qualities we've discussed, patience, silence, and disciplined restraint, you create a gravitational field that pulls others into your orbit. They naturally begin to align with you, to seek your guidance, to trust your calm assessment over their own agitated reactions. Not because you've demanded this influence, but because you've positioned yourself as the stable center in a world of constant flux. This quality cannot be faked effectively because it emanates from genuine internal discipline rather than performance. It requires the consistent application of the principles we've explored. The cultivation of strategic silence, the patience of the predator, the transformation of suffering into strength. If you're beginning to recognize how these elements connect to form a coherent system of influence, write in the comments, "I am the center that holds." This acknowledgement marks an important step toward embodying these principles in your own life. The most profound shift in your approach to life's challenges comes when you adopt what I call the rock in the river mentality. Look around, and you'll notice how most people engage with reality. They fight against circumstances, exhausting themselves trying to swim upstream against powerful currents they cannot possibly overcome. They struggle, they thrash, they exhaust themselves, and ultimately accomplish little beyond their own exhaustion. The alternative represents a complete mindset transformation. Instead of fighting the flow of events, you position yourself strategically within them, like a rock planted firmly in a rushing river. You don't resist the current, you let it flow around you. The water, no matter how forceful, must bend around your presence, and in that bending, the flow actually creates pathways that lead directly into your hands. This revelation changes everything about how you respond to challenges. Instead of exhausting yourself through resistance, you conserve energy through strategic positioning. Instead of being swept away by circumstances, you become the fixed point that forces circumstances to adapt to you. This isn't passive acceptance, it's the highest form of strategic control. Now I want to explore what might be the most essential foundation for implementing everything we've discussed: emotional detachment. To become truly untouchable, you must master the art of detachment, the ability to hold your emotions in check so completely that no one can pull your strings like a puppet master manipulating a marionette. Consider the hidden truth behind virtually every manipulation tactic, every attempt at control, every effort to direct your behavior. They all target your emotional responses. The individual who cannot master their rage, their lust, their fear, their pride, that person will always be vulnerable to external control. They are, in the most literal sense, emotional slaves. And slaves, by definition, do not rule. They are ruled. This journey toward detachment represents one of the most significant psychological evolutions available to you. It doesn't happen overnight, but through consistent practice, you develop an immunity to the emotional triggers that control most people's behavior. When others expect anger, you offer calm. When they expect fear, you demonstrate composure. When they expect neediness, you display complete self-sufficiency. The transformation happens when you recognize a crucial distinction that most miss entirely. The goal isn't to eliminate emotions that would create a hollow, inhuman existence. Instead, the mastery comes from learning to cage your emotions, to weaponize them, to deploy them selectively only when they serve your greater purpose. Think of emotion like fire, a powerful force that, left uncontrolled, will burn everything in its path. including you. But properly contained and directed, that same fire becomes a precision tool of remarkable power. This is the essence of strategic emotional management. Unleashed without discipline, emotion burns you from the inside out, clouding judgment, provoking impulsive decisions, revealing vulnerabilities. But directed with precision, using calculated displays of emotion at exactly the right moment, it becomes a force that can destroy obstacles in your path without consuming your own resources. What emotions most often control your decisions? Where might greater detachment serve you? If you're beginning to recognize the patterns of emotional reactivity in your own life, write in the comments, "I control my emotions. They don't control me." This acknowledgement marks the beginning of a crucial shift toward emotional sovereignty. The application of emotional detachment reveals itself most powerfully in how you respond to provocations. Every social interaction contains embedded expectations, psychological scripts that most people follow without conscious awareness. When someone insults you, they fully expect anger in return. When someone ignores you, they anticipate neediness or desperate attempts to regain attention. When someone provokes you deliberately, they're counting on a predictable reaction that serves their interests, not yours. The moment of transformation comes when you recognize this hidden pattern and make a deliberate choice to break it. If you deliver the expected reaction, you've already lost the exchange. You've confirmed their power to control your emotional state. But if you remain perfectly calm, presenting an unreadable mask where they anticipated an emotional outburst, something remarkable happens. The power dynamic shifts instantly and dramatically. This single principle, consistently applied, creates a form of psychological immunity that few ever develop. When others realize they cannot predict or control your responses, they begin to approach you differently, with greater caution, increased respect, and a subtle but unmistakable deference to your frame of reality rather than their own. Now, I want to explore what might be the most fundamental truth about power that contradicts conventional wisdom. Real power isn't primarily about what you actually are, it's about what others believe you to be. The world responds not to objective truth, but to perceived reality. This revelation changes everything about how you approach influence and authority. Throughout history, appearances have proven to be weapons sharper than steel, more devastating than brute force. If people believe you are strong, they will obey your directives even when you're significantly outnumbered. If they believe you possess special insight or knowledge, they'll follow your guidance even without proof. If they perceive you as dangerous when crossed, they'll avoid conflict with you even without demonstrations of force. The transformation in your approach comes when you recognize perception as your primary battlefield. Not physical confrontation, not verbal debates, but the careful cultivation of how others see you. This isn't deception, it's the strategic management of impressions. Every successful leader throughout history has mastered this fundamental principle, creating and maintaining perceptions that serve their objectives. Behind the scenes of every power dynamic lies this hidden truth. True dominance rarely comes through constant fighting or obvious displays of strength. It emerges through strategic positioning, like a master chess player who doesn't frantically chase pieces across the board, but instead positions their king perfectly at the center of a defensive formation. Your goal isn't to win every petty battle, but to position yourself so effectively that direct challenges become impossible without severe consequences to the challenger. When you position yourself correctly, through the cultivation of rare skills, the building of strategic alliances, the accumulation of crucial knowledge, you create a situation where no one can replace you or move against you without effectively destroying themselves in the process. This isn't about titles or formal authority. It's about making yourself essential to the systems you operate within. Think about your current position in your professional or personal relationships. Where might you apply this principle of strategic positioning rather than direct confrontation? If you're ready to shift your approach from constant struggles to calculated positioning, write in the comments. Position before power. This acknowledgement marks the beginning of a fundamental shift in how you approach influence in every domain of your life. The most essential evolution in your journey toward influence happens when you recognize the difference between power based on performance versus power based on necessity. Most people spend their lives performing, constantly proving their worth, demonstrating their skills, exhausting themselves to maintain their position. This approach creates a fundamentally fragile form of influence that requires perpetual maintenance and leaves you vulnerable to replacement. The key transformation begins when you shift your focus from performing to becoming necessary, creating a situation where your absence would create a significant void. This isn't about ego or self-importance, it's about strategic reality. When you become genuinely necessary to systems, organizations, or relationships, you achieve a form of untouchable status that doesn't require constant justification. This journey toward necessity develops through three interconnected pathways: unmatched competence in domains that matter, carefully cultivated strategic relationships, and the patience to allow these advantages to compound over time rather than seeking immediate recognition. Behind the scenes of every truly influential person lies this pattern. They've made themselves essential not through demands or titles, but through the quiet cultivation of irreplaceability. Now I want to explore how this framework manifests during periods of turbulence and uncertainty. In moments of crisis, most people respond with visible agitation. They become reactive, emotional, and unstable, precisely when steadiness is most valuable. The revelation that changes everything is this: becoming the anchor in chaos creates a form of power that cannot be purchased or demanded, only earned through demonstrated composure. When everyone around you is shaken, remain still. When voices rise in argument, maintain strategic silence. When panic spreads through an organization or relationship, hold steady with unshakable composure. This quality, this capacity to remain centered amid turbulence, creates a gravitational pull that others naturally orient themselves around. In a world defined by constant instability, the anchor is never replaced or discarded. The deepest insight in this entire framework emerges when you understand that genuine strategic dominance comes not through control or authority, but through making yourself so fundamentally valuable that betraying you would carry unacceptable consequences. The individual who is truly needed cannot be betrayed without significant collateral damage. The person who becomes genuinely irreplaceable commands a form of silent obedience that doesn't require enforcement. This represents a complete paradigm shift from conventional approaches to influence. Don't chase applause, validation, or public recognition. Seek leverage. Don't focus on titles or formal authority. Build yourself so deeply into critical structures that without your presence, everything would noticeably falter. This isn't manipulative, it's the natural result of becoming truly valuable rather than merely appearing important. All of these principles converge into what I call the triad of untouchable power. Three fundamental forces that, when mastered together, create a form of influence that's nearly impossible to challenge effectively. First, patience. The predator's discipline to wait for perfect timing rather than rushing forward prematurely. Second, perception. The strategic crafting of how others see you, creating impressions that serve your objectives. Third, positioning. Placing yourself where your absence would create genuine collapse rather than minor inconvenience. This is how true kings rise throughout history, not through noise and spectacle, but through the quiet cultivation of inevitability. If you recognize these principles at work in your own journey toward greater impact, write in the comments, "I am becoming inevitable." This acknowledgement marks an important milestone in your evolution toward untouchable influence. You've now journeyed with me through the foundations of untouchable power. The strategic patience, the calculated silence, the psychological leverage that separates those who merely survive from those who truly dominate their circumstances. What you've discovered isn't just theory. It's the hidden architecture behind every form of lasting influence throughout history. The question now becomes not whether these principles work. History has proven their effectiveness countless times, but whether you'll be among the rare few who actually implement them consistently. Most will nod in agreement, perhaps even feel momentarily inspired, but then return to their reactive patterns, their emotional displays, their desperate performances seeking validation. But I sense something different in you. The very fact that you've remained engaged through these revelations suggests you recognize something profound at work, principles that resonate with what you've already observed in the world around you, perhaps even glimpsed in your own moments of greatest effectiveness. If these ideas have sparked something in you, if you feel that subtle shift in perspective that precedes genuine transformation, I invite you to continue this journey with me. Subscribe to this channel, not because I'm asking, but because you recognize the value in continuing to refine these strategies together. Each video builds upon these foundations, exploring new applications, revealing new psychological leverage points that most never discover. I'd be genuinely curious to know which of these principles struck you most powerfully. Write, "I choose power through patience," in the comments if you're committed to implementing these strategies in your own life. Your comment creates a form of accountability, a public declaration of the path you're choosing. If you found value in these insights, let me know with a like, not because I'm seeking validation, but because it helps others discover these same principles. The algorithms that govern visibility respond to engagement, and your single action extends this message to others who might benefit from it. There's another exploration waiting for you right here that builds directly on what we've covered today. It reveals the next level of strategic influence, how to apply these exact principles to bend circumstances in professional environments where the stakes are highest. Click and join me there to continue deepening your understanding of these psychological dynamics. Remember, in a world where most are frantically chasing, desperately performing, and emotionally reacting, your calculated patience, your strategic silence, and your unshakable composure make you not just different, but dangerous. Not through force or aggression, but through the quiet inevitability that comes from mastering the art of waiting to win.